and this is an overview of Nagios Solutions and the value that they bring to the table, and a nice round of applause for our presenter, Mr. Shamas Demoret.
Thanks, Matt. And how about a big round of applause for Matt, our MC?
Woo!
In a previous life, I was a professional wedding DJ, and Matt was actually one of my trainers, so it's a serendipitous coincidence that we get to work together again. My name is Shamas Demoret. I'm a sales tech at Nagios Enterprises, and today I'll be providing you with an overview of Nagios Solutions and the value they provide. And I thought we would talk initially about what Nagios is, so that's what we'll start out at. And my guess is that most of you have some idea what Nagios is, or some of the things that Nagios is. Some of you might have come to find out what Nagios is, so we'll talk about that a little bit. First off, Nagios is a project. Nagios Core, most of you are probably familiar with, and that's an open source monitoring and alerting engine. And that's celebrating its 15th year anniversary, which is really cool. Give me a second to catch my breath. I was sprinting all around the hotel for the last 10 minutes. So sorry about the sweat. So it's an open source monitoring project, and it's used by millions of people all over the world. It's an excellent tool. Nagios is a community. Many of the people here at the conference are some of the leading community members. There's thousands of people from all over the world that contribute to the project and come up with really cool new add-ons and things to do with Nagios, and then share those with everybody else. And so everybody else in the world can leverage their work, and everybody works together. So it's a great community and tons of really cool people, and you'll be able to meet a ton of them here at the conference. Nagios is also Nagios Enterprises. That's the commercial arm of Nagios, and it's a really cool company. It's full of really cool people. I've had the good fortune to work there for the last 3.5 years, and it's a super cool place to be. And Nagios Enterprises has a variety of solutions. By a quick show of hands, how many people here have ever had a problem with their IT infrastructure? Yeah, right? I'm not surprised to see almost everybody raise their hand. Well, the bad news is the problems with your infrastructure are pretty much inevitable. Things are going to break, drives are going to fill up, applications are going to fail. So that's the bad news. The good news, though, is that Nagios can help. Nagios can help you identify and resolve outages quickly, and that's half the battle. In the keynote, Ethan talked about how the average cost of downtime is $200,000 an hour. I mean, that's a phenomenal amount of money, and you don't want to be spending that. So just identifying the problems is going to allow you to resolve them quickly and reduce the negative impact that those outages are going to have. It'll help you manage your entire infrastructure. So whether it's actual physical hardware, whether it's stuff hosted in the cloud, if it's applications, if it's your network infrastructure and network devices, if it's your web presence, pretty much any part of your infrastructure, physical or virtual, Nagios can assist you with that. So that's a really nice thing about it too. It's very comprehensive in what it can help you achieve and what it can help you fix. It can help you collaborate across teams. It gives you a lot of ways for people to interact with one another and keep a log of their interactions and the steps that they took to resolve issues that you experience. It can help you plan ahead. For instance, Nagios XI has a capacity planning tool that allows you to project future usage based on the historical data the system collects, which is very useful. It's not just, it's broken right now, it's probably going to break in a couple of months. And that's a really useful capability as well. It can definitely help you save time and money, $200,000 an hour for downtime. And basically being able to resolve the problems quickly is definitely going to save you time and money. And you can also rest easy because if it's your day off, you know that some other admin, you've got your contacts set up right, somebody else is going to know about the problem that can do something about it, which is always a nice feeling. And also, when you're responsible for everything, you're going to know there's problems and you're going to have ways to do remediation and resolve all of those issues. So those are some of the ways Nagios can help. In the presentation, we're gonna go really quick. I've got a lot to cover, but throughout the rest of the conference, there will be presentations on each of these individual solutions. So if one of them piques your interest, you'll have an opportunity to learn more about that as the conference goes along. So we've got Core, the open source project where it all started. We've got the Core Student and Pro VMs, which they're basically pre-installed VMs with Nagios Core as well as some popular community projects and add-ons. So it's basically just a real quick and easy way to just spin up a VM and go with Nagios. So those are really cool. There's XI, which is the flagship monitoring and alerting solution. It does monitoring, alerting, graphing, reporting. There's Fusion, which makes distributed monitoring very easy. You can basically just keep dropping in Nagios servers as you have greater demand. There's Network Analyzer. So In Nagios, you're going to be able to see interface bandwidth. You'll see how much traffic came in, how much traffic went out, but you're not going to know where it came from or where it went. And that's what Network Analyzer is going to provide. It's going to provide you with NetFlow data on actual IP origin and destination. Incident Manager gives teams ways to collaborate. You can easily integrate it with XI and create Incident Manager incidents when things happen in XI or in other applications. And then it gives people a place to collaborate, to keep track of what they were doing. You know, in Nagios, you've got comments and acknowledgments, but they're fairly limited. In Incident Manager, it's going to give you a lot more robust capabilities on that front, as well as the ability to do things like adding attachments to the actual incidents. And it's actually a really cool, lightweight ticketing system. Then there's Log Server, which I'll just fly through because my guess is most of you probably just saw Scott talking about Log Server. But that's a brand new way to organize and analyze and archive and actually make use of all these logs coming in. And then there's Reactor, which is also new. That's available in a free public beta right now. And Reactor gives you a way to automate complex processes. You create chains, and the chains are made up of various blocks, and it can do just about anything. So you can create all of these blocks. It's almost like a GUI for programming automations. So Reactor is publicly available. That's really cool. And we'll talk about a few other things as well. But we'll start out with Nagios Core. And of course, it's an open source monitoring and alerting engine. It basically schedules checks to happen and sends alerts when problems are detected. That's what it does. It's a monitoring and alerting engine. But it's also very customizable and very flexible. We always say you can monitor just about anything that uses electricity with Nagios. And that's true. I mean, one way or another, there's bound to be a way to figure out how to monitor something, and that's certainly the case with Core. Core is really cool, and it's also very customizable and flexible in that you can extend it with other projects to significantly increase what it can do, generating reports, other interfaces, and all sorts of things you can do with it. But at its base, it's basically a scheduling and alerting platform. The cool thing about Core also is that millions of people are using it. It's got tons of contributors. Again, many of them are here. There's thousands of plugins for it on the Nagios Exchange. I think we just broke 3,500 plugins. And if you're not familiar with plugins, basically they are what the Nagios engine runs or the agents run to determine the status of the things you're monitoring. And then they return a 0, 1, 2, depending on what the status of that item is. And Nagios goes, hey, it's okay. It's in a warning state. It's in a critical state. So all these cool people all over the world have created 3,500 plus plugins that you can leverage as a Nagios user to check all sorts of stuff. And you can write your own using the simple guidelines. So there's a ton of flexibility there. The possibilities are pretty much unlimited. And as we mentioned, it's the 15-year anniversary of Nagios Core, which is really cool. And you can, that's not an actual plugin, check everything, but it might as well be. You're like, the check everything plugin, what's that? Yeah, I'll use that. So we'll go through a couple of quick screenshots of Core. Here's a tactical overview. This is just showing you an overhead view of all your hosts and services. It'll tell you about network outages that have been detected, various monitoring features so that you can see that those monitoring features are in a healthy state. So Core does provide you with a web display mechanism, but not really a web configuration GUI. You'd be configuring all of your hosts and services with flat text on the command line. And I never want to say that's a bad thing because some people love to configure on the command line and they're comfortable with it and familiar with it, and that's awesome. But for somebody just jumping into it, it can be kind of daunting to learn how to do host and service and command definitions and find everything. So here's a service detail. So here we're drilled down to a specific service, and this is a really high-level presentation, so I'll explain really quickly hosts and services. A host is basically a device, anything with an IP or a URL. It's the device itself. And services are metrics you're monitoring on those hosts. So if you were monitoring a server, your services would likely be CPU load, memory utilization, drive capacity, services, processes. So those are your services, and this is a drill down to a very specific service that we're looking at. And you can see you get some pretty good information. We can even do things like scheduling downtime with the service, but that's about the extent of what you can do to actually make changes to the core monitoring engine from the interface. And then here's the network map, and this is based on the parent-child relationships you define as you're configuring your hosts and services from the perspective of the Nagios process, which is up at the top, the N. And so you're telling Nagios how everything relates from the perspective of the Nagios process. And this accomplishes some cool stuff. First off, you get things like the network map, so you can actually look at network topography. And second off, Nagios is actually going to intelligently alert based on these relationships. So in this example, if the router just south of the firewall were to go into a problem state, Nagios is going to realize that it can't get past that router to check the other stuff. And so it's not going to say this is warning, this is critical. It's going to say this is unreachable. And you can implement some intelligence into your alert logic so that you're alerted differently for unreachable. Because what you don't want is a flood of alerts for stuff that obviously Nagios doesn't even, it can't check it. It's not able to get to it. So that's one of the cool pieces of logic built into Nagios. And there are also some reports. And keeping in mind that these aren't going to be graphs or performance data reports, but they are going to give you things like state history, trends, a history of all of the alerts the system has sent, a histogram so you can actually see over time the quantity of alerts that have been happening, report of all the notifications that the system has sent out. And this is all just right out of the back box in Nagios Core. The Core Student and Pro VMs extend upon that a little bit in that they add some additional projects. On the upper left is the Student VM. And so these are VMware VMs or OVF templates if you're running vSphere or ESX. And they run CentOS 6.5, and they're bundled with Core and some other projects. The student actually has PNP graphs and the Nagios Core Config Manager, which if you use XI, you might be familiar with, but it's a configuration GUI for Nagios. And it allows you to do anything from configuring a new host to modifying a check interval or adding a contact, basically all in a GUI format. And so that's bundled right in as well. And then the professional VMs have even more. They've got the vShell, an alternate PHP interface. They've got Nagios Mobile, which is really cool. It's a mobile browser optimized view of Nagios. And it'll show you host and service status. It'll give you the ability to acknowledge alerts. And that's based on the Teeny Nagios project from Hirose Masaaki. So that's really cool. There's a NSTI, Nagios SNMP trap interface, which makes it a lot easier to see what's going on with SNMP OIDs. There's NagViz, which is going to provide you with Visio-style diagrams, and you can put active icons indicating statuses with those. And then there's Nagios Business Process Intelligence, which if you're an XI user, again, you might be familiar with, but it's a very useful tool that allows you to monitor the health of whole processes instead of just individual elements. So with BPI, if you've got a cluster of 10 web servers and really only 6 need to be running for your users to think everything is fine, you could set up a BPI group so that you won't get a warning alert until, say, there's only 8 working, and you won't get a critical till there's only 7 working. And you can set up critical members where you're going to get an alert if that goes down no matter what, but ultimately the whole point is to be alerted on the health of this complex process. And it could be 100 different hosts all working together to make this process work, and you can say, I want a critical alert when there's only 80% running. And so that's a really useful tool that's also built into the professional VMs. What's that?
If I bought the Pro one, is that a learning tool for me, or if I put that in my environment, it's only limited to 100 nodes?
No limit. No, it's all just bundled together. You could monitor as much as you can get that VM to do. Yeah. And so that is kind of nice. It's not, and now we'll talk about Nagios XI, which brings even more to the table. But on the Core front, there's no quicker and easier way to get started than those VMs. They're just like, boom, you're using Nagios Core. So XI brings it a step further. This is our enterprise class commercial grade monitoring solution. It uses the Nagios Core 4 engine, which has made a huge difference. In some cases, just the Core engine itself, we've seen a 700% increase in efficiency, which is awesome. Not only that, but also in how Nagios applies configuration. So in XI, once you make changes to your hosts and services, you apply configuration, and it basically writes those changes to the database and makes sure that everything meshes and it has all the information it needs to successfully monitor those items. Well, in the past, it would rewrite your entire config. And if you had 15 users all simultaneously applying config in a big environment, it could take 10 minutes. I was talking to somebody last night who said, yeah, I used to apply config and then go get a cup of coffee, and I'd come back and the config would typically have applied. Well, now it's gone from 10 minutes to 10 seconds. So it's just what it does is now it only writes things that have changed instead of the entire config, which is a huge change, and in a big environment, it's really nice. It's designed to be very simple and accessible. For somebody who's not familiar with Nagios or even not familiar with Linux, if they don't know the CLI at all, you still have a fighting chance with XI because you can jump in, and once you're in the web GUI, you can configure new hosts, you can generate reports, you can do a lot of things without having to know much. But for people that are familiar with Core, maybe you've been using Core for 15 years, you can still do all the cool stuff that you're used to and more, and you're probably going to see a lot of features in XI where you go, oh, I always wished I could do that with Nagios, and now I can just by clicking here. But for somebody brand new, it is a very, very useful tool. And I'm not going to say that you could just jump in with no knowledge whatsoever and do everything, But like I said, you'd at least have a fighting chance of getting started and configuring some devices. It empowers users to do more with Nagios, and it's got a ton of enterprise class capabilities that really extend beyond what Core can do and also fully leverage some of its potential. So first off, we've got the config wizards. There's over 40 preloaded, and pretty much any common device you can think of, there's a wizard for. Whether it's a Linux server, Solaris, AIX, Windows, any kind of database, a printer, a web page, if you want to monitor it for defacement or just doing DNS IP match or things like that, you can monitor it very easily. You can even do things like synthetic transactions, synthetic web transactions using that wizard. So most of the common things that you're going to need to monitor in your environment are going to have a wizard just built in and ready to go. And they're super easy to use. I mean, you just enter the IP or FQDN of what you want to monitor. And then in step 2 or step 3, you pick all of the services that you want to monitor that are just pre-built into the system. And then you're defining who's getting alerted, what the check interval is, what the parent-child relationships are. And it's,
I was going to say, does that do bulk loads of hosts?
Actually in a couple slides, it does, absolutely. Yeah, and that's probably one of my favorite things that it can do. Yeah, absolutely. And so you can do everything in just a few clicks, and then boom, you've just configured monitoring of your Linux server. And it additionally will link you to the relevant agent for that wizard and documentation for the agent. So it gives you everything you need in just a couple of steps to just set up monitoring of something with almost no prerequisite knowledge, which is really cool. The dashboards are really customizable throughout the XI interface. You're actually going to see a little Dashify icon, which is a blue rectangle with a couple of blue dashes above it. And clicking that will allow you to add that dashlet to a dashboard. And a dashlet could be a ton of different things. It could be a map, it could be a graph. And so you create these custom dashboards to show you whatever information is most important to you. And you can also add these to views, which we'll talk about in a second. And additionally, as an admin, you can create a bunch of cool dashboards and then deploy them to your users and say, these 5 users are going to get this dashboard, as well as being able to sync those. So if you make changes to your dashboard, your users are going to see that same change. There's the views, which are perfect for a network operations center screen. It's basically any URL from within XI or an external URL that you would add to your views and then rotate through at a speed of your choosing and basically just see all of these important pieces of information just flipping through on the Knox screen. It's a really useful tool. It's not quite as DIY as the dashboards are, but you can very easily add those custom dashboards to a view and then see all that important information. And obviously, typically, what people say to us, what our users and administrators say, is that what's most important is things that are going wrong. And so a lot of this is focused on allowing you to very quickly identify problems. Like, boom, look at that dashboard and go, hey, that's a problem. We got to take care of that. There's also a ton of robust, exportable, customizable reports built in. There's the executive summary, which is a nice kind of overhead view of everything happening. There's host and service availability. There's the new SLA report, which is very easy to use and very cool. That's an enterprise feature. And that would allow you to report on SLAs. You just pop in your SLA requirement on a host, and it'll show you if the host met it and if every single service did, and you can just export it and say, hey, we met our SLA. So that's really cool. There's state history, all the hard and soft state changes. There's top alert producers, the alert histogram, all the notifications the system has sent, all of the system events, bandwidth usage, which I'll show you an example of here, and then capacity planning, allowing you to project future usage based on historical data. And then there's network report and query if you put XI and Network Analyzer together. So if you put the two of those together, you also get these additional reports. And you can just set up any kind of custom query you want and get some nice chord diagrams and additional depth of network reporting. And then the bulk modification and bulk host cloning tools. Bulk modification, like I said, is really, really useful. Picture an example where you've got 150 hosts that you need to change the check interval on everything for. You could either do it one at a time, or with bulk host modification, you could do it in like 30 seconds. You just select them from a list, decide what you want to change, and the feedback we get on bulk modification is always really good. People go, you saved me so much time with this bulk modification tool, and that makes us very happy. It's great that it's useful to everybody. And bulk host cloning is similar but different. What it allows you to do is use a host that you've already configured as a template and apply that to 10, 50, 150 other hosts, all with a couple of clicks. So you say, here's my Windows server, I've configured it, with the caveat that you've tested it and made sure that it's working properly and it's configured the way you want it to be, because you're about to have 150 of them. But once you've tested it, you just say, that's my template, I want to monitor those exact same services on these 150 IPs and you hit a button, and boom, that's it. You are now monitoring all of those hosts with a few clicks. So there's some big time savers for larger environments for sure. So XI is great for somebody who's got a small data center with 20 servers, and it's great for somebody who's got 10,000 spread across a huge global deployment. You know, the tools are useful pretty much universally. And here's an example of the bandwidth report. If you look on the upper left, you'll see where we're actually selecting the particular port that we're reporting on, and then we've got, and this is just automatically, magically generated when you run the network switch and router wizard, which is a real easy way to configure monitoring of a network device. So we've got traffic for the last day, the last week, the last month, and the last year. Underneath in the tables, we can see monthly and quarterly breakdowns. And actually, if we click through on any of these, we get to a drill down of daily breakdowns of bandwidth in and out and max and sum. So you can go even deeper than this, but it's a really nice report. If you look on the upper right on the reports in XI, you can export them all as PDFs, some of them as CSVs. You can email them from the interface. You can schedule them for delivery. So you can, you know, they're not just stuck inside of XI. You can send them to people and do things with them as well. Additionally, XI has got auto discovery and capacity planning. Auto discovery, you can schedule scans. It's a really nice inventory tool. It basically does an Nmap scan of the subnets you define and brings back the IPs it detects and the open ports that were found. Not really a configuration tool in as much as it is a way to find out what's out there and then configure it using a different wizard, but it is a really nice way to do a scan and see what's out there and what's changed. Capacity planning, again, here's actually some examples of capacity planning. So in these particular examples, here we've got the data that Nagios XI knows about, and then to the right, in the gray, we're actually looking at the projected performance of that particular service. And it's really easy to use. You just select your host, select how far into the future you'd like to project, and that's all you have to do. It just kicks out the reports. You can add them to dashboards, and that's probably what is most commonly done is you'll do capacity planning and then create a dashboard of some of the most critical things in your environment and be able to just jump to it and go, you know, these are likely to, we're going to need more hard drive space on this particular host very soon. So that's a really useful tool.
On the auto discovery piece,
Yeah.
Can you throttle the discovery?
What do you mean by throttle it?
Well, you know, you use something like Network Node Manager or something, we've actually brought network to their knees because the discovery process goes out there.
Ah,
Us too. We got the same problem.
the trick is definitely to scan a small enough subnet, I guess. I mean, we always recommend that you scan a small, you know, don't scan too big of a space because it could cause problems or it could potentially never complete. You know, the scan will just kind of go infinitely and never finish. So I don't know that there's really a way to throttle it other than minimizing the amount of network segment that it's actually scanning.
The fact that you don't throttle it is the reason we don't use it. That's one of the
Oh,
things
okay.
we turned off, so it's just because I don't know what it's going to do.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's actually really good feedback. Maybe after the presentation, if you want to talk, I can make sure that the devs get that feedback because that's really useful. Thank you.
But can you control the Nmap parameters that are sent to Nmap when it does the scanning?
You can't do much other than what the interface is showing you. So there's nothing you could really change. I don't know if you've used the component, if you're familiar with the capabilities that it enables.
Daily, but
Sure.
I thought use XI yet.
Okay, yeah.
I need to find out.
Sure.
Can it help me? 'Cause I'm
Seamus?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. We're actually recording these and we're going to have these available online. So if everyone could just kindly hold your questions towards the end, then we'll get you a microphone where you can ask that and we can make sure we get it recorded because that way I'm sure others are thinking the same questions and it'll be available online afterwards.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
yeah,
Shamus.
I'll definitely help you out afterward. Thank you. Okay, so auto discovery, capacity planning, awesome stuff. Here we go. Well, wait, there's more. So in XI, it's got an integrated database, so it's collecting state history. By default, it's collecting 4 years worth of data. It is also collecting performance data that your plugins return in RRDs. It's got the Core Config Manager, very easy multi-tenancy. It's extremely easy to not only manage your users, but also to a really granular extent manage what they can see and what they can do, with just right in the GUI. It's very simple. It's got NagViz. It's got Google Maps, which would enable you to create geographic maps with active icons of your deployment using geo-coordinates. It's got BPI, and then it's got Nagios Mobile. This is kind of scratching the surface. After lunch, I'll be doing a presentation that goes into more depth on just XI specifically, so that might be useful. Or right after that, Sam Lansing, one of the support techs at Nagios, is going to do a presentation on some of the more advanced features of XI. So if you really want to dig in, that one will be really good as well. Now, Fusion is basically a very easy model to use to do distributed monitoring. It'll work with XI, it'll work with Core, and basically, when you've got more to monitor and your Nagios infrastructure can no longer handle the load, you just drop in more Nagios servers. And what Fusion is going to provide you with is a centralized tactical overview of all of those. So you'll be able to just jump into Fusion and say, you know, everything looks great over in this section, but this one looks like it's in trouble. It does some cool tricks if you use it with XI as well, like allowing you to just click through with a single click to pre-filtered lists on the actual XI machines. You can also click through to Core machines, but you still need to authenticate in. It allows you to visualize your entire infrastructure. It's got the same dashboarding capabilities basically as XI, just in the context of all of your Nagios servers. And it's a great way to manage a worldwide network or a countrywide network. And it has a lot of capabilities to just allow you to very quickly, at a glance, see what's going on everywhere, and then drill down to those specific items to see how they're performing. And here's just a look at a Nagios Fusion Home dashboard. And you know, you've got some useful information. So this would be top alert producers across 6 Nagios servers. So you can just jump in and go, okay, you know, I have very little time. I got to prioritize. What do I need to focus on? Well, boom, it looks like that Ludmill server is having a lot of trouble. It also gives you a few status summary on the upper right, just to give you an idea of across everything, you know, what's performing well and what's not. We've got recent alerts on the bottom, and then host health summaries for each of the individual Nagios servers. And those are just some of the many dashlets that are built into Fusion that could make it very useful. Nagios Network Analyzer integrates very easily with Nagios XI, and as we discussed, it's going to give you more in-depth information about what's happening on your network. You're going to see where traffic is coming from. You're going to see where traffic is going. It makes it easier to detect intrusions and compromises. One example would be to just set up a query for common botnet traffic and, you know, be alerted and be able to see it like, boom, we're getting traffic from these common botnets. That's not good. This report should, you know, ideally be empty. Now we see things here and we need to do something about it. It's got some nice reports built in. Network Analyzer itself does not have the ability to export reports, but integrated with Nagios XI, you can then create custom reports and export them just like you can all the other XI reports. And it is very easy to integrate with Nagios XI. And it's got its own dashboards and reports, very easy to add sources to Network Analyzer, and it gives you real-time reporting on network traffic. This would be any of your network devices that are actually flow capable, or using some additional applications, you can get flow details for your servers and desktops as well. So the screenshots are basically just showing us on the bottom right a nice chord diagram of how all the traffic interrelates, and clicking on any of them would make it the focus, and the graph will actually morph itself. And then we've got pie charts and tables showing particular information. And so that's just a couple of examples of the screenshots that are within Nagios Network Analyzer. And as I said, it's very easy to integrate with XI as well. It's just a component. It's just a couple of clicks and the two are synced together. And then you can do custom reports in XI. You can do top talkers by the source IP report or the destination IP report, top talkers by bytes, top talkers by packets, and then the network query report I talked about, for example, of a common botnet, you know, traffic from them that you don't want, that you hope the report is blank when you go to it. And then from XI, you can export these reports and then deliver them however you'd like. And so again, very easy to integrate those two. We also have Nagios Incident Manager, which is a nice lightweight ticketing and incident management system. And it'll help you resolve issues quicker. You can create users and teams. Basically, you can organize the incidents that are coming in. You can do some basic automations. You can prioritize. People can collaborate and communicate, but you also have a very nice tail of the tape of what happened. You know, user A did this, user B did this, user C added this attachment, and here's how the incident was resolved. So you can go back to it and say, well, this time it worked, and that time it didn't. You know, the processes were different. There's also some advanced reporting. You can add notes and attachments, as I said. There's some basic reports built in, like mean time to resolution, first response times, closed incidents, and of course, easy XI integration. And here's a quick screenshot of an incident. And if you look on the right, you can see where you can add attachments and change the priority and status. You can add messages. And it's not just a quick, like, I'm working on it, XI acknowledgement. You can add, you know, a full message about whatever you're working on. And log server. I'm sure you guys have heard all sorts about log server, so I'll cover it super quick. You can organize, analyze, archive, and dashboard all the logs coming in. The pricing is super competitive. It has built-in alerting by email, RDP, SNMP traps, and alerts. And it's also got the wizards that I'm sure you saw built in to help you very quickly start pulling log data and collecting it from Windows and Linux, network devices, applications. This is a really cool screenshot that you may have already seen, but this is just an example of a dashboard that you could create within Log Server. So it's got a lot of capabilities beyond just making it quick to query particular elements that were occurring in logs. And clustering is very easy in Log Server as well. Very easy to just add on new servers to handle additional load. And I also wanted to talk about NCPA real quick, just because I'm personally really enthusiastic about the agent. I don't know if any of you have seen the documentation online, but it basically explains why NCPA exists. And it was actually at a conference, the original NCPA developer, Nick Scott, was discussing with someone, and they were saying, why are agents so complicated? You know, why is it always fiddly? Why is there all this stuff to do? Why doesn't it just work? And so that, I don't know the particular verbiage, but that was the gist of it. And that led to NCPA, which is Nagios Cross-Platform Agent. It monitors Windows, Linux, Mac. It does active, it does passive. It has a cool web heads-up display where you can actually, on the right, see an example of the real-time graphs you're going to get. And you know, once you start it up, it's actually real-time. You're actually seeing exactly how this stuff is performing in the web heads-up. So it's a really, really cool project, and definitely recommend checking it out because you can monitor almost anything with it. And it has a really good online resources as well. There's Reactor, which you can learn more about at the conference here. But basically, it's in public beta. You can get it at nagios.com. It's a way to manage automation and workflow by creating blocks, and you can save these blocks and leverage them over and over again, and creating chains of automation that are going to do specific things. And in the screenshot, you can see all the things that are built in, and this is just scratching the surface. You can create pretty much anything you want, but this is the default list, and you can see it can do just about anything to just about anything. So that's a really, really cool tool, and that's just freely available in a public beta right now. And here's some use cases, actually. If you've got network problems, you could create an automation chain to diagnose and repair. You could dynamically respond to security events. If your site is being hacked, if your network is being breached, you can set up a really intelligent automation to deal with that. You could automatically deploy software to new machines as they pop up. Just create a chain that says, hey, that's a new host. Let's throw an agent on it. Let's set up a config, and boom, you're monitoring, and it's got its agent. You could auto-scale cloud infrastructures as your load changes dynamically. And then we do also provide a variety of different services at Nagios. There's the live training, which I'm not sure if any of you have had the chance to go to before, but there's a basic class and an advanced class. And speaking from experience, the trainings are great. Mike Weber, who runs our official training partner Spider Tools, is actually here at the conference. He's going to do a couple presentations. He's an excellent trainer, and all of the people that work with him do a great job too. Can't say enough about how cool the live training is. And you can take it anywhere. It's conducted via GoToMeeting. So wherever you're at in the world, you can take this training and chat with your trainer, text with your trainer. And you also get access to a great collection of class recordings, VMs, just a huge knowledge base online as well. There's also the self-paced training, which is a video tutorial library that you can access. And actually, self-paced training access is included free with any of the software that we have. So any of our solutions, you get free access to self-paced training. And it's not just XI, it's also core training in the self-paced section. So that's really nice. We do offer professional Nagios Core support as well. We've got professional and admin certification, and actually, just in case you missed it, since you attended the conference, anytime within the next 30 days, you can take the certification for free. So you can be a Nagios certified professional or admin or both for free since you came to the conference. So that's kind of cool. You get a certificate and everything. Implementation, we don't do that directly, but we've got a network of partners all over the world, a bunch of which are actually here at the conference, who can help with that. So if you want someone to check out your deployment and fine-tune it and work with you on best practices, or even starting from scratch, full deployment of Nagios Core or XI or anything, they can certainly help with that. And just get a hold of us, and then we'll connect you with somebody who can take care of you. Even right here, but we can probably connect you with someone right here at the conference. There's also quick starts, which those are free if you're trying our software and you want one of the Nagios support techs to just do a remote session and help you with anything from installation to, you can't figure out how to, monitor this particular item with SNMP traps or whatever it is, we can help with that too. We'll give you a free session. And then there's also jump starts here at the conference. In track 5, I believe, a bunch of the Nagios techs are basically just going to be in there to help with whatever you need. So if you have questions, if you actually want to just give them your machine and say, help me with this, they can sure do that. And then we also do custom development. Not a ton of it. We're typically pretty busy developing and enhancing and fine-tuning our stuff, but you know, if you're looking for a custom plugin or wizards or components or reports, we can certainly help with that as well. So just get a hold of us, and we'll find out a little more about the project, and then you know, figure out if it's something that would work out well for all of us. So a quick recap: we talked about XI, Network Analyzer, Incident Manager, Fusion, Core, Log Server, NCPA, and just hopefully you guys have a fairly good general idea of what they all do and the value they might provide at this point. And then, like I said, throughout the rest of the conference, if any of them look particularly interesting, there are full in-depth presentations on all of these too, where you can learn more about the ones where you're like, hey, that could be really useful to me. So how to get started: we've got fully functional free 60-day trials of all of these. We've got the quick starts I talked about in the jumpstart sessions in track 5. Support.nagios.com/forum is an awesome resource for anyone using anything from Core to all of the commercial solutions. It's the Nagios support team. It's community members who have been on there for years. And so if you have a question or a problem, just jump on the forum, register a username, and post, and everybody there will be super helpful and take care of you. It's a really good place to get help, and there's no cost on the forum. Just jump on and post in general support, and they'll help you out. So like I said, lots of other presentations. In your program guide, at the very end, you can learn a little bit more. And also on your USBs, you've actually got VMs of all the solutions, and you can just pop them in and spin them up and try them out. And then, of course, Nagios.com is a great place to learn about all the commercial solutions, and Nagios.org is a great place to go to learn about Core. And then Exchange.nagios.org is the community site where you can, you know, just leverage all the awesome stuff people have done, or even contribute things that you've created back to the community. So yeah, thanks so much for joining me today, everybody. I really appreciate you taking time out to come join me. I know there's always a lot going on at the conference, so I'm really thankful to see that the room was full and you guys were like, hey, let's find out what these solutions are. But now I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have to the best of my ability. And keep in mind, I'm a sales tech, so I'll do my absolute best to help you and find you someone who can if I'm not able to.
Yeah, name's Tori Hagan. I was just wondering, the Incident Manager, we use a solution right now, ServiceNow. That's one of the popular ticketing systems. Would you guys be able to, or have you guys considered having a direct connection to like ServiceNow or Remedy through Incident Manager? I'll give you a use case. We might want to test out incidents going to for development environments, so we'll get a lot of incidents for that. But for like production environments, when we actually roll the alerts over, we might want that to go to our fully functional ServiceNow implementation.
So Incident Manager would act in part as your incident management, and in part as kind of a middleman between your monitoring application and another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'd use Incident Manager for like pre-production environments and ServiceNow for production environments.
Sure. Okay. You know, I don't know. I can't speak for the developers. I'm not sure if they've thought about that, but I would be surprised if there weren't a way to make it work. There's bound to be a way to push and pull however you need to interact with other applications, for sure, yeah.
Okay.
And that's actually a good point. Incident Manager isn't just for integration with Nagios or Nagios XI. I mean, it's a ticketing and incident management for anything, and I'm pretty sure it's got an API, so I bet you could accomplish what you want to. I just don't know if you could just click a button and magically everything's going to ServiceNow.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm a new user to Nagios, and I bought the book, the 4.1, and followed the instructions in it, and they didn't work.
Okay.
I've been to the website and followed the instructions on it for the build guide,
Yeah.
and it didn't work. Modules and whatnot weren't available. I've just done a CentOS build now while you've been talking and used the Yum package, and it doesn't work.
Oh.
Or is that working?
Oh, well, you can at least see the sub-menu on the left.
Yeah,
That's a good start.
But it's like sort of struggling. So who does the quality control on the documentation?
Well, there's a lot of documentation that we provide and maintain, like the core documentation on SourceForge. But a lot of the OSs maintain documentation. A lot of people individually maintain documentation. Your best way to get it from the horse's mouth would be to just go to the forum and get help. Now, since you're at the conference, that works out well because you can just jump over to the jumpstart room, and I'm sure they can have you up and running in like 10 minutes. They can help.
I'm a Windows engineer foremost, and I'm really struggling with Apache and whatnot, and I'm just sort of thinking, do I really want to introduce this to my team? And
Yeah.
it's just
Well, welcome to the jungle. All right. No, these guys are happy to help, and you're not alone in that. A lot of people hear about Nagios, and so many people use it, and it's everywhere, and they want to jump into it, but they come from a Windows background, and that's where all the techs here can definitely help. And I'm happy to help too. Just come see me. I know we're kind of running out of time.
It's 6 minutes. We're okay.
Okay, good. But there's tons of people here who can help, and I'm sure we can get you up and running. And definitely check out XI too, because like I said, it's just quick and easy, and you don't need too much of a frame of reference. Like the installer, you're just downloading a file, unpacking it, and running the installer script, and boom, you're running Nagios XI. So it's a simpler process.
Like Core, because I can introduce it to the organization at no cost. Nobody has to sign it off.
Sure.
It's just we're using it now.
Yeah, right.
Oh, if it did all this, it would be nice. And then I can justify
And then
it
they're like,
based
well,
on that.
actually, it can. Yeah, no, that's great. So we're definitely happy to help. In I think the Jumpstart room, just bring your laptop over there, and the techs will take care of you. Yeah, thank you.
I was gonna say, one way we got around that was we actually downloaded XI and installed it.
Can you use the mic that way?
And then just basically, when you have your directory, just get rid of the XI, just go to the Nagios directory, and there's your core install.
It's actually a good point. Just go to /Nagios instead of Nagios XI, basically.
It's fully functional.
Yeah.
And just use the one script it installs. It worked great. I had the same problems you did until I installed XI, and I actually used Core without the XI component.
And then you can just go to a different link, basically, when everybody asks for the additional features, and go, oh, here it is. Yeah, cool. Good idea. Thank you.
Does XI support any assistance with determining thresholds for new services?
I guess, do you mean like baselining?
Yeah.
Like intelligently saying, well, not necessarily. In XI and in Core, you're kind of very specifically defining your thresholds based on your personal decision on when it's broken and when it's not. So there's not really a baselining. The capacity planning, sort of, it's looking at everything that's happened and telling you what probably will, but it's not going to intelligently adjust thresholds in an automated way based on performance. So you'd basically be defining those on your own and saying, if CPU load is this, I want a warning. If it's this, I want a critical. The defaults that are built into the system are pretty good, but a great example of when they might not be is if you've got a 100 gig drive or a 5 terabyte drive, your thresholds are going to be different because on a multi-terabyte drive, even if it's at 90%, there's a ton of space left. So there's a lot to think about, but ultimately, no, there wouldn't be any kind of an intelligent threshold setting mechanism.
Hi. How well does Nagios Fusion and Network Analyzer integrate with Core itself? And one more quick question. I had to downgrade Core 4X down to 3.5, the latest version, just because, at least on the forums that I was trying to troubleshoot, they said the PMP for Nagios, the latest version, wasn't compatible with 4X. Do you have any insight on that?
You know what, I guess I don't. I'd stick to the techs for that, the support team. Like anything, as you advance the core engine, you're going to need to make adjustments to some of the popular things people use with it so that it all still meshes. I would imagine that, over time that's going to be resolved. As far as Network Analyzer, that doesn't necessarily integrate with Fusion. Core and XI certainly do. And whether you're using Core or XI with Fusion, you're going to be able to see things like host and service statuses. There are several dashlets built in to Fusion that wouldn't work with Core. And like I said, with XI, you can just click a single link and be in a pre-filtered list in the XI GUI. With Core, you've actually got to just authenticate back to Core.
So if you have, let's say, one instance of Core, one instance of XI, and then you want to integrate it, both instances of Nagios through
Sure.
Fusion, would this work?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. You could have 15 cores and 9 XIs or whatever you want, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
One up here, man. Thank you.
Give me a workout.
That's right.
Yeah, hi. I've got a very large distributed core implementation. Looking at, but not sure what to use, whether we're going to go XI, Fusion. I thought it was XI, now it looks like it's Fusion. Is Fusion used for configuration management, or is it just for pulling the displays together?
Excellent question. Fusion is strictly a tactical display mechanism, so it's not going to give you the ability to configure everything from one place. In a Fusion model, you'd basically be able to see everything in Fusion and then be configuring and reporting independently on each of the Nagios servers. Depending on the scope of your deployment, there's also a centralized model where you're feeding from Core or XI workers essentially up to a centralized XI system. And at the central XI system, you can do reporting and configuration of everything from that central XI. That, you know, it's going to, of course, depend on the scope, though, because if, I don't know, do you have a ballpark on how many hosts you guys monitor?
4,000,
That's certainly feasible, yeah.
37,000 services.
Okay, yeah, that's a big
The
deployment.
big issue, though, is that a lot of it's segregated off into DMZs, so we actually have to specifically monitor certain, like IP ranges from specific Nagios servers.
Are you
we able to
able
do that?
to push out from those subnets, though? So the more isolated ones where you have to monitor from a specific location, can you at least passively push things out of that network?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because the centralized model in XI, it's got built-in inbound-outbound transfer mechanism that just uses NRDP. And so your workers are going to be collecting all the data and then just passively pushing it to your centralized instance. So that might actually work. You just need enough Nagios servers to cover each of those sections, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So on the network analyzer, so what are you using to gather the metrics? Obviously, on bandwidth, you're probably doing things like SNMP, right?
Yeah.
But you mentioned, again, we went through it pretty quick. It looked like there's some like intrusion detection or something. Are you doing like TCP dumps, or what are you doing there?
It's the intrusion detection would probably be more around custom queries that you created, looking for specific things. What it's actually capturing, though, is any kind of flow, S-flow, J-flow, C-flow, IPFix. So the device itself has to be capable of producing those flow metrics, which, you know, not all switches and routers are, but many are. Or, as I said, you'd install an additional application. I think it's nprobe or fprobe on a Linux machine to get that flow data. So it has to be capable of it, and it has to use one of the compatible formats like S-flow or J-flow.
So you're not doing any packet analysis or anything like that?
It's not really analyzing it. No, I mean, it's telling you exactly where the traffic came from and where it went, and how much, you know, what the bandwidth quantity of the traffic was. But it's not saying you'd have to tell it to look for traffic from this particular place and tell you that there's a problem. It wouldn't just go, hey, this looks bad.
So it gives you kind of a conversation map then, is that?
Pretty much, yeah, yeah. It just gives you all of the data, and then integrated with XI, you have a little more intelligence to create those custom queries and alert based on those results.
All right, we've got time for one more.
So currently I'm using Core, and one of the things I do is I have like a Git repo in my Etsy Nagios directory, so I can keep track of my changes.
Sure.
So I envision, you know, if you're having a user interface and make it easier for less technical people to start messing with the configs, is there anything integrated with the XI to do kind of revision management, the ability to roll back or see which user through the web interface made what changes?
Absolutely, that's
Okay.
a really good question. XI has a few features that would help there. There is an audit log in the enterprise version that's going to tell you basically who logged in when and what they did, so you can actually see what your user's activity was like. There's also, it's actually been advanced quite a bit in XI 2014. There's a configuration rollback capability. So when you apply configuration, it automatically takes a snapshot of you know, what it's like right at that moment. And so if things go terribly wrong, you can either, you know, look at the error log and fix the problems and apply config again, or you can just click a button and roll back to a previous good config. You can also now in XI 2014 have a local archive of those, or use FTP to just push them to another machine on a schedule. So it's really easy to keep a good config always ready to go to roll back to, and it's really easy to see what was changed, because for each apply config, you've got the entire log of that attempt that you can look at. So yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to comment, one of the things that we found valuable,
Yeah.
you guys keep the good, bad, and the ugly. So it
Right.
isn't just good snapshots.
Yeah.
If your configs fail, you actually keep a snapshot of the bad config, so you can actually roll back,
Right.
get you back up and running, but you still have the bad config that I can actually go in and analyze.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you've got the red dots and the green dots. Yeah. Thank you. That's a good point.
Well, lots of great questions, and there's probably going to be more to come from that. So Shamas will be available, and as he also mentioned, the techs are in the Jumpstart room available throughout the conference. Thank you. How about a nice round of applause for Shamas?
Thanks so much for coming, everybody.